All right, everyone. Welcome again to the Grace, Accept, Evolve podcast with James and Ray, where we are, leaning into life and talking through energetic shifts. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm staying cool on a hot summer day. So
that's right. It is. What's today? When we're recording it, we're like towards the end of June. So this is where it's getting real hot, especially after the summer solstice on the longest daylight day of the year.
Yes.
Yeah. So how's your week been? How have things been since we last caught up?
Life is active and I'm doing my best, or it feels like, as we're talking about the summertime. Mm-hmm. So it feels like the time where the environment is moving, the grass is growing, the trees are blooming and sprouting. And right after spring, obviously we just jumped into summer. So I was just reflecting on that recently, kind of being in sync with the seasons. Fall and winter is more like the hibernation and the relaxation, or the kind of staying within. And summer is like, hey, it's time to move.
That's
Things
right.
are happening. You know what I mean? So let's make it happen, sort of thing.
Yeah, I definitely feel that as well too. It feels like my life is pretty much like picking up, weirdly enough, like the same as you. And I was just telling James actually before we got on the call that I've been having, this is not usually an issue for me, but I've been having trouble eating because of the heat. And actually my sister, we were at Target today and we were talking about it, and she's also had lost her appetite. One of my friends has too. I'm like, I think it's because of the heat. So it's good to not feel like I'm alone, and there's like, just like this might be something that some people's bodies do during the summer, and I'm having to be way more conscious about eating. And but there is something that is coming up for me around some recent changes when we're talking about like activity and things. One of my social media platforms right now is getting a lot more traction this past week. And I've been doing some new things for my pages. And it's so interesting how when people will ask me, oh, well, how many numbers is this? And how much is this happening? And what's this doing? And, I keep going back to something that I pray about. For those of you that might be new to me, and maybe you just know James, I'm a channeler. I'm an intuitive psychic, and I do tarot readings and chakra readings, energetic readings, all of those things. And so I pray a lot when I'm going through moments of excitement and shifts and things like that, when I think, oh, should this be more, or should this be less? Or do I deserve this? Or do I deserve even more? The universe has been very comforting this week in saying, like, your journey is your journey. You don't worry about the numbers, whether they go up or down. You just keep doing what you feel in your heart you're meant to do. And that's been like such a huge message in my life currently, is to not compare my journey to anyone else's, and to also just be grateful for the people that show up and participate and give their time and energy and space in what the community that I provide. And I want to like just talk about it for a second, because James essentially taught me that. There were years when I used to go to James's meditations, and he would sometimes show up and know that I was the only person going to be there. He would drive from New Orleans and do that. And I was just so inspired. And if there's a reason why I don't really care as much about the numbers, it's probably because of you. Because yeah, we had times where there was bigger circles, and there was a time you drove, like I said, there and back from New Orleans for one person. I don't know how you did it. I'd be like, gas is high, I'm gonna stay home, but you would do it.
Yeah. Well, that came from, and for those that are just getting introduced to me, again, I'm James, host a meditation group, and I used to, primarily based in New Orleans. So I used to host meditation groups regionally, and I would travel, to nearby cities on a regular basis, hosting group meditation. And so Um, one of the things that was helpful along the journey was that I remember I would actually go to a nearby city called Covington, and we would meet downtown Covington. And it's a really small town, and some of the progressive ways and non-progressive ways. Anywho, just everybody, we're in the deep South here. So, anywho, I got advised or recommended one time that told or advised that it doesn't matter how many people show up, and that even if I was there by myself, the work that I'm doing or the energetic component of me being there and setting an intention and holding space and so forth and so on, those within that environment or even within that building, within that room, the energy would be different when they go back into the space. Now, obviously, that's not exactly what my ears wanted to hear, or maybe my pride wanted to hear, or ego, whatever one wants to call it at the time. Because I was like, dang, I want 20 people, or, I was focused on the numbers. But that helped me get on track, helped me focus, keep the main thing the main thing. And so that helped me develop that focus. So it's like, okay, well, what is my purpose? What is my intention? What is the goal here? And in a way, it also opened me up to being open to how the universe or spirit or God wants things to unfold. So it's meant for this many people. And actually, talking about that, a lot of times, if it was a scenario where it was just me, you, one-on-one, the meeting became more personal. Like we got a chance to have more in-depth conversations and probably share things we wouldn't have shared or talked about if we were in a big space. And so, yeah. So that was a huge piece of it. And I guess in talking about it, and maybe we'll edit this part out later, I'm not sure. But one thing that was always I thought about too is I can't remember who said this, but anywho, I'm sure many people have said it, but they talked about not being too concerned with maybe my role is not to change the masses, but maybe to influence the people who will change the masses. Mm-hmm. And so now, as I said, I think even Tupac might have said that in a song or something about he's not worrying about changing or inspiring the world, but inspiring the people who will change the world. Mm-hmm. So again, if it's just one person, if it's 10 people, 3 people, 4 people, if that meeting or that exchange or that interaction made a difference, and this person has that confidence, has those skills, has those abilities, and has that inspiration to, who knows? I can't predict it, Yeah. And I guess, and I don't want to ramble on too much. I'll give one more example. Is that I heard Oprah say that one time as well too, because she was talking to Maya Angelou. And I mean, just to even think Oprah's on this big, massive scale and a billionaire and has the OWN, the O channel and the magazine and the da-da-da-da. And even she was having a moment where she was doubting or questioning her purpose. Yeah. And so she went to Maya Angelou and Maya Angelou basically told her response was that, dear, there's no way you can even fathom your purpose or the effect that she's going to have, because there's no way to quantify or even put in some sort of scale who she's going to reach, who watched an episode, who listened to this, or who was inspired. Like, there's no way to put that into perspective. It's just, you do the work or do the mission or do the activity and let that be it. Plant the seeds, So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because it is interesting to look back on where there are times where it does come to mind where I think I was inspired to not look at things like that. And, just talking to you about it specifically, I was like, oh yeah, James modeled this to me for years. And I actually thought about you again this past week. I want to call her, she's someone that's entered my community, and she's so sweet. She's so supportive, and she's not in a moment right now where she can pay me for, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, my spiritual services. And but she helps me on all of my lives. She helps me do things. And so I told her she was having a rough day and I was like, I'd like to call you for like 30 minutes. Well, we spent like an hour on the phone and I didn't do a reading for her, but I just like listened to her and what was going on. And I told her I'm intuitive, whether we're doing a reading or not. And like, this sounds like this is what's happening and things like that. And I told her, I don't do one-on-ones. I don't just call people all the time. And she just was like, why would you call me then? And I told her, I was like, because someone did it for me. You know what I mean? And I was talking about you as well. It's just like someone has given me undivided attention when I didn't think that I may have deserved it, or maybe I even sound like a broken record. I was really going to this person with a lot of pain and they just held space for me. And so I feel, and I don't know why I've just been emotional the past few days, but like, I just feel compelled to do the same for people when I can, because I would just truly not be the person I am today had we not had those conversations, whether it been in that meditation room or over Indian food or all those, the times even when we lived together for a few months, it was just I always got to talk to you and I knew you weren't always going to tell me what I wanted to hear. And sometimes you may not told me anything at all, but you would at least just, sit and listen. And yeah, it taught me basically what we're doing here on this podcast is learning grace for myself and how to accept where I'm at. And then through that acceptance, can I just recognize what either a pattern I am doing, and I don't demonize my patterns at this point in my life. Like sometimes I think that's a pattern that serves me, or that's a pattern that's a part of me. And I'm not sure if that's ever going to change. So I accept it. And then there are other patterns where I'm like, okay, I can see how this might be old and I don't need to use it as much, or maybe there are certain situations to use it, but I don't even demonize my patterns anymore. Cause I'm like, I don't know why this is coming up for me. And I don't have to know why right now. I just, in this moment, I feel like I can have grace for myself to be a human being and not have to change myself all the time and just listen to myself. And so it was a great moment to hold space for that person and just to see her evolving now. Last week, she was having such a hard week and she just sent me a message today. It's like, oh my gosh, I did this thing. And, it was what she was having a hard time with last week. And I was like, wow, that shifted fast. But, honestly, I didn't ask her to shift anything. I'm like, sometimes we are where we are. And then it just shifted for her. And I'm just like, this is incredible. That was fast. But,
Okay.
So yeah, it's been a very interesting few weeks, just experiencing growth and then what I'm putting my time into and what's taking up more of my time. It's just been interesting couple weeks for sure.
Beautiful. Yeah. One of the things I would like to talk about, especially with the audience members, and I'm sure maybe some do have a practice, maybe some don't, maybe some have multiple practices. But one of the things that was a big, huge of me kind of tapping into grace, which even goes into the ability to sit and be present with someone while someone's going through something. And so obviously that started out with my initial meditation practice, which was, just kind of repeatedly sitting and being present, and then using certain techniques or certain intentions to invite in grace. And so a big part of that journey and evolution and acceptance was being present, being able to be with the emotions that were coming up. And being able to not only share that with myself or allow that for myself, but then having the grace or the space to allow that for others. And so I would say, having a practice, having whether it's yoga, whether it's music, whether it's, creativity obviously is a huge space where people can do that in, and just allowing that creativity to flow through, or something higher than themselves to connect with. And we're like, all right, in this conversation, in this moment, I'm going to, just be present, be graceful, or,
Yeah.
how I guess that's a good, we can kind of sector into that. What does being graceful, what does being graceful mean to you, Ray? How does that interpret to you?
When I advise myself to have grace, and then what I've been able to transfer over to my friends, clients, whoever, my community as well. I have a mantra that helps me be graceful.
Wow.
It's not really like I don't invite grace in. I tell myself I'm a human. That's just what I tell myself. And I tell other people that too. I was like, you're human. You make mistakes. Like, I don't know who told, and it's something I have to do to myself a good bit, is like remind myself I'm a human being. And especially another mantra that I feel like I got from you is awareness is the first step. And I have a hard time believing, and you could, I wouldn't say that you would argue with me on this, but maybe you would have a different perspective on it. But I feel like until we have grace for ourselves, then I don't know if we can get to that awareness for certain things, because some things might be too hard to look at if we don't have grace for ourselves first. Whenever we look at it, like we might have some shame that we do not want to see. And so we can't become aware of something if we don't have grace for ourselves as a human being, primary. So this is why I always encourage my clients and myself that, you're a human being and you're allowed to make mistakes. Like, not just will you make mistakes, you're allowed to. No one is out here batting 100. And I constantly remind people of that, whether they show you their life or not via social media or in real life. No one is out here making all the right moves and knows what they're doing. So yeah, that's what I constantly tell myself, I'm a human being. That's where I find grace. What about you?
Two things. One would be the breath, focusing in on the breath. And then two, I guess, and I'm a little bit, I feel like I'm revealing my secrets now, but doing a gut check. I often do gut checks. And so literally, if I could be in a conversation and then if someone is sharing something and they might complete a thought, I'll do a gut check to see if the gut or my intuition is telling me to say something or what to say or how to proceed. Or if the gut is silent, then I'm silent. And so it actually becomes quite easy and simple. This kind of leads into, this may veer off the topic a little bit, but it leads into this misnomer that I had growing up about awkward, quote unquote, silence, or like silence is bad. And so sometimes I would, be in situations, especially if it was somebody I liked, a partner or something. And if me and that person had silence for too long, I thought that was a bad thing. I thought they might have not been interested or bored, or I needed to fill up the space full of something. And then it took me some years to really learn how to be with someone, and that just to be with their presence, or just have someone be with my presence. So let's just be together and be silent and just be present together, and how beautiful that can be. And so the communication then at that point becomes nonverbal, and there's all these other faculties that kind of kick in, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm vibing in a different way and in a very special way with this person. And so, yeah. And even that takes grace, because again, all the insecurities can pop up, and the thoughts and the, like, I need to do something. This person needs to, or what is this person thinking of me? And which again, some of that might be all just in my own head. So yeah, doing gut checks. Just noticing the breath of being with silence is one of my forms of grace.
Very interesting. Yeah. I don't do gut checks a lot. And actually, when you said that, it made me wonder how many people would be afraid to do gut checks. Because if there's anything that I've been noticing over the past few months of working with people in this way, a lot of people are afraid of their truth. And I feel like the gut will tell the truth. And so when I hear doing a gut check before like giving a response or something like that, I feel like a lot of people are afraid of their gut telling them to speak up or to be quiet, if that makes sense.
In a way, like for instance, there can be like a difference, like in a gut actually might be a feeling. And so again, even in listening to the gut, there also has to be some level of trust. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm trusting, not necessarily trusting my environment or what's around me or what my senses are picking up on, and I'm trusting, okay, that even the gut is not going to lead me into, a awkward scenario or maybe temporary awkward, or the gut has my best interest. That takes time. That comes over time. Yeah. It's not necessarily an instant thing it could be instant. Everybody has their own journey or process to develop that connection or to grow in that way. Yeah. But it's definitely not necessarily about any judgment of right or wrong. Am I making the right decision or the wrong decision or the best decision, or am I going to mess things up? It's really more so about tuning in or tapping into a frequency and or tapping into grace. Because if I try to do it from let's just say an egoic place or my thought process, I'm still, and again, I'm speaking for myself. Everyone has effective ways to, navigate, communicate, and process. But if I'm communicating or reacting or responding, it still may be through the lens of my own perception. Like I still may be listening to someone else's story. My brain may be processing, trying to pinpoint my own experiences I've had in my life to connect and relate to what they're saying. And then just in my own experience, I find like a different truth or a deeper truth at times comes out, like you were saying, but just something different comes out than if I had tried to do it from, an analytical standpoint or some other way.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's my form of grace.
Yeah. And I really like it. I just almost wanted to, because it's almost like I could feel it in my body that I love that you have that level of trust with yourself. And I do, like you said, it is grace, because it's not that I think what you are as well, and I could be wrong, you could correct me, but like you're also curious. You're open to being curious, and you're open to follow your gut and see where it leads, and knowing that you can have the grace for yourself to navigate whatever experience arises from whatever your response or non-response is. I think if you're listening to this today and you're like, man, I wish I could do gut checks and just trust that I would make a decision and not beat myself up over it, or all of these things, I think there's a way you can develop that, because I love that. And I think that's what people struggle with a lot, though, is that not knowing if they'll be able to navigate the situation that will ensue after trusting themselves with that decision, what their gut will tell them. But I do also agree that, the gut is such a great way to listen to yourself. And that's actually in certain situations, I tell people, just touch your stomach. What does this tell you? And I get nervous sometimes telling my clients that, because I know when they tune into that, it's going to tell them something that they've been pushing down. And usually I know it before they do it. And but it's powerful for them, because they really get to hear themselves. And it's weird that it's actually, we touch our stomachs and not our brain, what should I do? We don't touch. I've never done that. What should I do right now?
Right. Yeah.
For people that were listening to the podcast, I touched my forehead. I forget that some people won't be watching us. I was touching my forehead and then touching my stomach, and I've never touched my forehead and be like, tell me what is next, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's just a different mode of operation. And
Yeah.
again, yeah, different mode of operation or yeah.
Yeah. And if you're listening to the podcast, I mean, you are listening to the podcast. If you hear me talking right now, then we would be curious what your mode of connecting with yourself and how you make decisions. Like, where do those decisions come from? Do you think them through? Do you also do a gut check? If you don't know, this could be a really good question to carry through the week of like, what is it? You know, how do I make decisions, and where do those decisions come from? Do they come from a space of fear, a space of lack, or a space of curiosity? And I like the word curiosity a lot of times. I tell people, just stay curious about it. If you don't like it and you want to try something new and then it starts to go south or something, you can back out. You can say, you know, and that's how I always go into situations. I'm like, I could quit if I don't like this. I always do that. Do you do that too?
No.
You don't? What do you do?
I usually don't enter into situations
that you're not sure about.
Yeah, I usually kind of take time to assess properly, and then there'll probably still be some nervousness, but then I'll proceed, forward.
Yeah.
If it feels like, if it unfolds that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely, more.
Me and James are different people. This is something that's come up in our friendship a lot. It's like, I'll be doing one thing and then James is like, oh, I'm actually not doing that right now. I was doing that last week and now I'm doing this. It's like, well, we're kind of opposites in a lot of ways, but actually that's another way that James has helped me on my journey is like, he's probably one of my friends that has like a very different process than me at different points. Like sometimes, like I just said, we will do something similar, but it's like we're at different points in our journey, we'll do it. And I started to learn that like, oh, I'm not doing it right and he's not doing it wrong. This is just how we do it. And so with James saying that he likes to think things out, he's a little more detail oriented than myself. At least I've known that. Would you agree? I don't want to say things that you don't agree with. Detail oriented. Okay. That's how I would kind of describe it. And there's a lot of situations where he's very thorough. I am not that person. I am an Aquarius rising. And so I used to be that way. I will say in my younger years before I started traveling, I was very much, I thought things very well through. And if I wasn't comfortable with it, I would not do it. Now, if I'm not comfortable with it, I'm going to do it because to me, that's where most of my, how do I want to put it? Like, I learn like really interesting things about myself when I do things that I have no clue what I'm doing. And it scares me. I didn't tell you this, but yesterday, James, I spontaneously invited a bunch of people from my community to do a live dance party on TikTok live stream. So, but let me tell you how this went down. I was the only one dancing. I was the only one you could see dancing. Everybody else got to be behind their screen, like in the chat. And I was on for whoever to scroll around on TikTok to see me dancing to Britney Spears, NSYNC, all kinds of great stuff.
Okay.
Your girl can't dance. And when I tell you, I was sick to my stomach thinking about what I had agreed to. And I just had to think about, honestly, the reason I did it is because so many people in my community said, I've been feeling called to dance, but I can't even do it in my room by myself. It just embarrasses me to think about doing it by myself. And I was like, okay, well, guess what? I'm just going to do it online for people to see. And then hopefully that will give you the courage to do it by yourself. And they had a great time. So did I. And and I told myself going into it, if I hate it within the first 10 minutes, I am shutting off the phone. Like I will not just sit there for an hour and do that. Even though I said I would just believe my community would give me grace and say, and I would tell them, hey, I don't really like doing this. I'm really embarrassed. And they would be like, it's okay, Ray, we love you. Like that's what they would have done. And then we would have done something else. But cool. Yeah, I definitely throw myself into the fire quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just kind of chill back and sit. And yeah, and also too, I watch for synchronicities. And so if usually those are clues, like even more so, like going back to the whole piece about the conversation, if even while listening, if there's like some synchronicities or things that are repetitive that pop up, then that might be something to share or to talk about or to discuss. But usually that's also a form of, I guess, grace in a way of, if there's synchronicities that happen, then that'll be, if I see it multiple times, that'll be a clue for me to move forward on something, or me to act on something. And I would say that too, because I guess just personality wise, I am like super committed. So once it takes me a lot to commit, but once I'm committed, I'm committed. And so it's like, oh, I have to kind of reserve or be extra clear or careful about selective, which way I channel my energy or put my energy, because it might take me a little bit longer to bring that energy back in, or it'll take me longer to find out, oh, I should be in this direction or that direction. And so actually even more now later in life, I'm even more, quicker. I guess we're almost saying the same thing, because I'm quicker to cut something or pull back from a situation a lot smoother or quicker than I was earlier in life. Usually I might stick with something. So I guess we are saying the same thing, but in a different way. Yeah. I'm just now seeing it. These days, it's more so with, I guess it's with activities, but definitely I see it with people, especially like new people. And this could be, if we go into the astrological thing, again, I'm a Scorpio. So it's like the whole loyalty factor, the whole protective factor, the whole having a shell type factor, and a stinger comes in. But definitely I see, okay, I can quicker now better assess, like, or even listen to the universe. Because sometimes this is the other thing. There'll be clear signs that I shouldn't be moving in this direction or shouldn't be interacting with this person, this, that, and the third. But previous in life, I might have ignored all that stuff and kept it going. Even though I
for loyalty purposes, or
not loyalty, just being blinded for whatever reason. I might have a notion or a concept in my head. Or I might have expectation in my head, an idea in my head, and be like, oh, I'm excited about this idea, and really move forward and keep kind of going. When there was like, massive, not massive, but there were just strong signs or clues or indicator before, like, oh, I should pull back. Oh, this, and again, this is not a judgment. There's no right or wrong, because it was just something that helped my development or my efficiency with my energy. It's like, oh, okay. Like I could think of a recent situation. Well, I won't go into that situation. Well, I'll paraphrase it for the audience. And so basically, okay, I could talk about it as this, like this. So there was a person that I had an interest in, and it seemingly like they had an interest in me. And we had conversations, and hopefully, I don't know if this person will ever hear this, recently, but we were talking one time, and they expressed some situation that seemed really current with the previous partner. And so a piece of me, right now, I'm still kind of in the middle. I'm a little neutral, because a piece of me would ignore that whole conversation and just move forward. Be like, okay, I'm vibing, they're vibing, doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. But experienced me, or laid back part, is like, oh, that's kind of like a clue, just what they expressed and how they expressed it. I was like, oh, that's a clue that I might not want to get involved with that person right at this time.
Can I? Oh, you're about to say it. I think you're about to say it.
Yeah. So they're still processing feelings. They're still processing emotions. da 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 da, and I get a part of them wants to move on, and this, that, and the third. But for everything I have going on in my life right now, and all the priorities and stuff, I might not be the person that is the next one in line, like that. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what that reservation is, or that non-moving forward energy is. It's like, okay, let me step back. Let me kind of look at, and this kind of even going to the gut check moment. Let me assess how that just made me feel, instead of just pushing through it and moving through it, and then it's sorting itself out later. And again, this is just the context in this situation, not every situation, because like you said, in some situations, it's fantastic to move through and move forward and push and kind of expand, past comfort zones and so forth and so on. Like I said, just at this stage, I've noticed, or I have more awareness to like when to pull back. And even if it's early on. So like you were saying too, if you would have been uncomfortable 10 minutes into it, you might have pulled back out of it. And so, yeah, in certain situations, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Let me pull back a bit, kind of observe. Let me reel my energy back in, and just kind of give it space to unfold. So obviously that could be with people, that could be with job scenarios and situations, which again saves disappointment, at least from my perspective, saves disappointment, saves headache, saves confusion. Obviously, it also could lead to fun times and opportunities and moments and this, that, and the third. It just, excuse me, that was a belch, but I just so happened to be in a space to where this, and we were talking about this, I think, before we started. There's so many activities going on, and there's like the priority of activities that, unless the situation or scenario gives a clear sign, or there's a super strong signal to proceed or move forward or something like that, it would just be too distracting to divert like myself off of, distract myself off of like my focus and what I'm doing and where I'm going. I feel like we kind of went in a different direction, but it's still a similar vein.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from. It's like some kind of, quantify who I spend my time with, where I spend my time with, who I engage with, because especially on the interpersonal interactions, like that takes up. I think I heard the other day somebody talks about someone said to someone else, like, this person's living rent free in your head, sort of thing. And so those
some people need to pay up in my head.
You get what I'm saying? So it's like
past due, getting evicted level.
Yeah. And so it's like that energy is like, okay, right now I gotta be clear about where I put my energies into and how things unfold,
And see, that's kind of what I feel like I was getting at earlier, where it's good to know your patterns, because you have a pattern of like being more committed, and so it does make you, instead of being like, wow, I shouldn't be so committed, I shouldn't get my feelings all wrapped up into someone. It sounds to me that you're more aware of your, I don't know if you want to call it conditioning or patterning, you can put the word you want on it, but you're aware of yourself and how you operate. And so it's like, well, I know how I am, I know who I am, and I know if I give more energy to this, I would maybe set myself for being disappointed, because I do like to see things through. That's the kind of person that I am. So I think that's also what Grace has helped me with, is like also learning my patterning and seeing that, like, I would go above and beyond for people in the past, and they could hurt me 1,000 times, and I would just have a hard time letting them go. Or I see the good in people even when they're not showing me the good, is what I tend to do. And so now my new pattern is to just move on without telling them a lot of times, which I won't say is like, I'm not saying it's no, look at your face. You're like, what the hell? I'm not saying it's a great,
no, I hear you though.
I'm not celebrating this pattern of mine. I mean, I understand why a guy would run for the hilltops because of that. And it comes from a place in myself where I'm like, if I keep pursuing this person that seems totally disinterested in me, like to me, that's a burning house. And I used to love to run into those burning houses. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna let that house burn on its own. And I'm not even going to tell the fire department that it's burning, and,
Gotcha.
and again, it's just awareness. I'm not advocating for that at all. It's
Right.
more of it's something that I also have to be clear about with my energy. And I agree with you, is different patternings. And I think being where I'm at is like, I'm just tired of feeling like I need to change when everybody else seems to be going about their business, and they're doing their work on their own terms too. So I just kind of believe that there will be somebody that comes along that can meet me where I am instead of me having to change for them. And if this is a pattern that I have and something, I'm not a cruel person by any means. And I don't just like ghost people. Honestly, sometimes I just take space. James, you're looking at me like that. But what I will do sometimes, this is going to be a whole, that's a whole other episode. We can get into my dating life on another day. And I totally, if we had a little more time today, I would, because I think it's important. And, but it's more that at this point, I'm open to seeing how my patterns go, and also take that accountability as well. I can see where a guy would be coming from and be like, when before I would make them the bad guy, but I would be like, but Ray, you emotionally detach. Like, you do not like to lean into these hard conversations. So that's where I'm like, I'm trying to become more aware when there's a hard conversation that needs to happen, and I need to have it. And if they walk away, I can take responsibility. And I was like, I didn't want to have the hard conversation. I have a hard time having those. And so it's not the blame game anymore. I'm not shaming myself too deeply over it, even though there is some times when I feel bad about it. And I'm also not making people into villains for them leaving or doing whatever they got to do too. So again, still single. And just like taking it a day at a time.
Well, and I would add to that, also still graceful, or even more graceful, because even in that example I gave, and we'll go back to the question where we were talking about the topic, that's also a form of giving grace. It's like, hey, and I'm just talking this out. I'm not in my head. It could be said in a multitude of ways. But I'm going to give myself grace not to feed into this narrative or an old pattern or an old ideology when I'm seeing clues. So again, I'm talking this out. So I'm going to be graceful on myself, to go easy on myself, to be patient with myself, to, again, have grace with myself, to be comfortable with myself, also with everything that I have going on. The fulfillment I get from the nurturing connections in my life. And like, as you were saying as well, allow grace or allow space or accept where I'm at, which again also leads to evolution, or the evolutionary process for attracting a different situation, result, so forth and so on. But again, that's how I see that behavior pattern. Because again, easily, especially a decade ago, I could have easily, been very focused and channeled in on, I want what I want. I'm going to get what I want. And even if I have to navigate this in a certain way, me getting what I want is more important than what I'm seeing. And so that's, if I had to say anything, that's probably the most difference as far as we're talking about interpersonal relationships or partnerships and stuff. It's like me getting what I want and chasing, and the thrill of the chase and the reward or the feeling of accomplishment from the chase, quote unquote, I was more like honed in on that or mystified by that or hypnotized by that than like really saying, you know what, this person probably told me several times, certain things that now I'm seeing, months later or years later, whatever the case may be. It's like, man, I could have just listened, But again, with grace with myself, it took me going through those processes and those experiences and those results and those patterns. It took me going through those patterns to get to the insight or the evolution of where I'm at today. Like, oh, I can step back and let the, chill and let the situation breathe. And if I interact with this person more and are still picking up on those same signals, and then they kind of still give those same signals, and if it comes stronger, then I'm more certain and clear. And actually, this is in my birth chart of how what works for me. But yeah, having that strong signal helps me to again open up and to accept or to evolve and grow and be clear about, hey, this is how I want to proceed and move forward. Yeah, and it gives me grace for even when things go, I don't want to say wrong or sour, but just when things are uncomfortable, the challenging times, because I'm like, dang, okay, I really do care about this person, and we have space. I've noticed that in friendships as well. It's like, oh, there's room to give grace or space within friendships. We've talked about this several times, but I've definitely recently had a friendship where I told the person, I was like, hey, I need a break in our friendships. But thankfully, we both kind of resonated with that, and there was space for us and grace, maybe interchangeable words in this this conversation, for us to be like, oh, let's take a pause, because I got some stuff going on, they got some stuff going on, and let's revisit this back when we both feel comfortable and not and again, this is a different context than the dancing, but when we're not pushing through or forcing ourselves or feeling like we have to behave this way based on our previous experiences. It's like, no, this is actually how I'm feeling in the moment. And and now it almost feels like a plug. I'm accepting how I'm feeling. I'm accepting something so off. And let's let it breathe a bit until we get it back on track, or until we both ready to get back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, if that person and the other person can move through it at that point in time, by all means, move through it, go through it. Yeah, like you said, it's just that self-awareness, is having that awareness of like, oh, this is how I operate. This is what's beneficial for me. This is what's best for me, or this is what intuitively is coming up in this moment. And let me proceed forward, trust and have grace, to proceed forward with it.
Yeah. And I feel like the practices that we do, it does. I mean, I typically don't have a lot of arguments with people. And like when things do have to take a break, things end very amicably, because I have a way of like communicating. Like I'll even try to have hard conversations with, I don't want to make it seem like I actually haven't dated in like a few months or something like that. I've only recently started again, because I do take accountability for what happened in the last relationship. And I was like, well, maybe I just need a little break and like to think about it. So I don't just like jump into things all the time. And when someone tells me, hey, Ray, this just isn't working out for me, I feel like we attract people because we are so graceful with ourselves, and I like to feel like I have free will in all of my situations.
Yeah.
When someone there's nothing worse if you try to make me do anything. Like, you're smiling, so I'm wondering if it's the same for you. I might know the answer, but like when you make me feel like I'm in a corner, we're going to have a hard time, and so absolutely. I like to give people that same space. And so, but actually I've noticed a few people, not just like men, but like sometimes others as well. The only people I'm just going to be straight up. The only people I will deal with that with is family. Only my family can kind of put me in a space to have a really uncomfortable conversation. They're like, we ain't leaving until we figure this out. And I will entertain that with certain loved ones, because they want to have, it's just because of love. Like, if you really feel like we have to talk about this right now, I will do it and we will talk, but I'm not afraid they're going to leave me. Whereas I could say something, a lot of times I don't like to say things, because if you're going to make me say something, you're going to hear what you made me say, kind of thing. I need a moment. I need a moment to collect my thoughts, so I don't say anything rude or something I can't take back. So if you're going to push me to say it, it might get there. And my family can deal with that. They've been with me 30 years. They've heard it before. They'll hear it again. But someone I'm trying to get to know, I'm not afraid to show them that side, but I don't know them like that. So I don't like to show that side of me, and it can come through, but maybe I'm going to start. Maybe that's my part of my evolution, that I need to even stop trying to hide this part of myself that you're going to poke the bear, gonna roar. I don't know what you want me to say. And so, just accepting these parts. I feel like I went on a tangent as well, but there's a lot of layers to relationships for sure, to wrap that up, up that thought.
I even heard it brought up because I even heard recently someone share about their definition of vulnerability. And so their definition of invulnerability, vulnerability, was just being themselves, being their true selves in that moment or with the people or in the situation that they're in. And they were saying the difference of how their previous interpretation of vulnerability was like they had to be hurt or, this, that, and the third, or not being scared or something like that. But just something where, you're vulnerable, you could get injured or something like that.
Yeah.
And so there's like, oh, well, let me, and now that I'm talking about it, I can kind of see it's somewhat like that, but it's more so the energy is on the other side of the scale, the spectrum of like, I'm being vulnerable, but my focus is more so on my truth and just me living in my truth and walking in my truth, whatever how people may interpret that, but just me being myself, like me being my authentic self. And that's probably more, it resonates a little bit different. Me being my authentic self in this moment is my vulnerability. It just doesn't have to be like sharing a deep secret that, you get what I mean? Like it's just authenticity. And so it just caught my ear when I heard her sharing that and saying that. And if I could think of who it was in this moment, I'd give them credit for it, or I'd mention their names. That made me think about that. And yeah.
I think as you say that, what keeps coming up to me is like, these people haven't proven to me I'm safe with them yet enough to show them, because that is a vulnerable spot. Like for me though, I have a very deep rejection wound, all the things. And so if I think you're going to leave me, which to me is like the not safety part, that's what like was devastating at a time in my life. And so it's like, if I think you're going to leave, if I show you who I am, then I just need to not show you who I am until I feel safe around you. So I think that's the weird part with relationships, because I do not show people who I am until I feel safe and secure with them. And there's a lot of people that think I should feel safe and secure with them within like a few dates. And I'm like, brother, get out of my face. Like, and they do not like that, but I'm like, you are a stranger still. What do you mean? And I don't get it. I don't get people that want you to just open up your whole life story within like three times. I guess 3 is a magic number for me, because I don't know how many times it would take. It actually doesn't take a certain amount of time. It's just whenever I feel safe. So I don't know, maybe that's something else we can talk about for next week if that comes up, but because that's a whole nother topic. I feel like safety in relationships and showing yourself truly.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely have another episode based off of that. I definitely feel like it's still in that mode of what we're talking about now, is like grace and awareness. So it's like you're giving yourself grace and having that awareness for grace or of grace to be like, okay, this is how I need to move forward. This is what I'm comfortable with. This is when I'm comfortable. I'm okay if in this situation, moving through the discomfort, or it's okay if I chill in the comfort. Like I enjoy that as well. It's like that terminology or that phrase about something about moving through the discomfort. And then so in my brain, I'm like, I'm comfortable.
Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Is that what you mean?
Different things like that. Like to me, it's like there's a time and a place. So like even like right now, right? Like with the podcast, we've talked about this. I'm not really I'm very private in certain ways. So being seen and having a video component and expressing and sharing with the masses is very new. Yeah, obviously I'm used to doing it in group settings, in-person group settings. But to be in a digital space, I'm like, okay, and do this with a friend. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can move through. I can cut on the video camera. So in that case, it is, as far as expansion goes, it is time to, there was like a review process of like, all right, I can take these steps, especially with Ray and move forward. And the timing, the synchronicity seems appropriate. The timing feels appropriate. And so, yeah, I'm ready to move forward. So those sorts of...
I just want to tell everyone, I do think that you had been talking, not necessarily doing a podcast with me a year ago, but I feel like you had even mentioned it up until like a year, if so, maybe even maybe a little over a year ago. Did you think about, oh yeah, I was thinking about a podcast. And then you may have told me about it. You brought it up to me like 10, 12 months later. You're like, I think I want to do that podcast. I'm like, James, you said that a year ago. Like I would, but I act like I was surprised. I was not. You know, if I sound surprised on the podcast, I am not, because James and I have been friends for almost 10 years. And so I do respect his process, and I kind of, if it's fair to say, I don't expect anything else from you, if that's okay to say. It's like, I know you well enough to where that I know that's how you work. So it's not odd to me. If it's odd to anybody else, I don't know. And I'm so used to that process of yours. And I think it's really, there's parts of it that I really, if I'm honest, kind of envy sometimes, because I wish I thought things through as much as I used to back in the day, because I think I would save myself some disappointments and some things. But, you know, I am the human being that learns a lot by hitting my head against something a few times. Let's be clear, a few times it's got to happen. And maybe that will shift for me later. And I'm so used to hitting my head at this point that I just try to wear a helmet more often, you know, like I'm okay with running into the wall as long as I got my helmet on. And so, yeah, I'm always up to try new things, and yeah, I respect your process a lot, even though ours are different.
Yeah. Likewise, for sure. For sure.
Awesome. Should we do like any kind of closeout? You feel like one thing I was thinking about is, as we close out episodes, maybe asking, you know, if something came up for you, if there's a thought, if there's something we talked about, feel free to journal about it. Maybe what is an aspect or a pattern that you struggle with in your life? If you want to journal a little bit about that today, a little inspiration for journaling or reflection. What's a pattern that you really, maybe I hesitate to say carry shame around, but something you judge yourself heavily for? And did anything in our conversation maybe inspire you to accept that part, or give grace to yourself for that aspect of your experience, and not so much resist it, but see what it holds for you and how it benefits you, and maybe even what part of it is something that you don't want to, or you see if it's a hindrance. Like maybe just lean into it. If there's something you thought of today, or this conversation inspired that in any way. What about you, James? Yeah. It's a question, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. We'll probably, I'm more than sure we'll have the email address in the description of the episode. And so feel free to email us any questions, comments, any topics that you may want us to cover and talk about in future episodes. Also, too, as an exercise or reflection, feel open to notice what are some of the ways, or write down what are some of the ways you give yourself grace. What are some of the ways that you give grace to others, or you allow grace to flow through you to others? And I would say the practice of potentially the practice of being clear about that can be, again, aspect of yourself that you want to emphasize or carry forward or even strengthen. And so just having that clarity of like, oh, my grace is presence, or my grace is my smile, or my grace is my laughter, or my grace is my music. And then obviously sharing that more with yourself, sharing that more with others. Obviously the world will be, it'll evolve us all. So, and feel open to share your ways of grace too. So even if you jot down that list and you have a song that you want to share, or a laughter or a joke or something like that, only PG rated jokes and songs. It's a children's channel, something, but no. And so, so thank you all for being here and at the Grace Accept and Evolve podcast with James and Ray. And again, follow us on any social media platforms or any digital pages and all that good stuff. And
share it with your friends. If there's someone that you thought of that would really like to listen to the podcast as well, share it, subscribe, do all the things. Is there anything else, James?
That's all I got.
Oh, that's it. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, we will see y'all next week. Yep. Bye.
Perfect. Yeah, have a good one. Bye.